You're about to view an episode of Sites on EdTech, Zanichelli Venture's interview series with people from the education technologies world. I'm your host, Luigi Morino, and in this episode, I interviewed Robin de Lange, founder and director of the Virtual Reality Learning Lab. Robin is also a lecturer at Leiden University, where he teaches the honors class Learning Through Virtual Reality. He has extensive experience in promoting the use of VR in schools and organizations. So I asked him to share his experience on the challenges and opportunities of using VR in education. Here is the interview. So I'm very happy to be speaking to Robin today. Thank you for joining us, Robin.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so first of all, could you explain what the Virtual Reality Learning Lab is?
Yeah, so what we do a lot is it falls in a few pillars. I think we help schools and other organizations who want to use virtual and a bit of augmented reality to innovate their teaching, innovate their e-learning, we help them. Okay, what's already out there? Which tools can we use to develop our own e-learning? What applications can we use to start implementing already? Can we challenge our students to create 3D or VR experiences themselves? And that sort of leads to a second pillar where we teach students digital skills for the future ourselves. So we have a pool of teachers who go to primary school or high school or vocational education, and we teach them how to create 3D worlds, how to code, how to work with 360 cameras, and perhaps also some microbit and robotics in the curriculum. So that's sort of the second pillar. And then we're creating our own prototypes, we're continuously doing research, and yeah, as the field sort of becomes more mature, we're now starting more development programs. We develop more applications ourselves as well.
Yeah, so I've been really wanting to talk to you because few people like you have this much experience in actually seeing what rolling out VR and XR in education, in schools, on field is like. You run this quite interesting model of having your group of teachers who then are basically sent out to schools, right, to run these programs with kids to teach them with VR and XR.
That's one part of our organization that's grown quite a lot over the past years. Yeah, there's quite a teacher shortage in the Netherlands, and computer science education is horrible. Is horrible over here, and that's something we cared about. At least I cared about for many years now. And we sort of combine those things, and we have our own group of substitute teachers where we solve an acute problem for schools, and we also help them to prepare students for the future.
Why do you think computer science education is not so good in the Netherlands? I mean, usually Southern European countries look up to Northern European countries when it comes to IT education within schools. So it's on one side a little surprising to hear you say that.
Yeah, it surprises me as well. My dad used to explain things often with the remmende voorsprong. So you're ahead of the field, but it actually slows you down. And I think that's something you definitely see in the Netherlands. Our public education is considering worldwide top notch, I guess. But it's so good that we don't really feel the stress. So for example, you see Eastern European countries where they say, this is our way to progress our knowledge economy. We have to teach the students the skills for the future. And yeah, we've sort of been in the luxurious position where we're already quite comfortable. and that's not always the best basis for changing things.
I understand this. I ran an interview with Monica Katkut from Teachers Lead EdTech, which is being utilized enormously in Lithuania. I think she was saying she has 40% of primary schools in Lithuania in order to upskill teachers technologically. And these are public schools that are directly investing in upskilling teachers so that they can push forward this knowledge to students. But your model is very interesting of having your own teachers dispatched to schools. Now, can you tell?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you tell a little bit about this model? What, how do they go into schools? How do they partner with local teachers? And what kind of exercises do they run?
Yeah. So, yeah, this has grown quite a lot, and 2 years ago, our biggest form of income was training teachers in the Netherlands, but also internationally. But yeah, COVID wasn't really, that didn't help the whole events business. Just doing workshops. Yeah, I have to bring VR headsets. People need to try those things. And I actually, yeah, so doing that online is actually pretty hard. And teachers were completely burned out with their kids at home. So it was training. I think the whole field of training wasn't in the best place. Hasn't been in the best place for the last couple of years. So we were sort of driven to focus more on this part of our organization. And yeah, so we work a lot with CoSpaces, for example. CoSpace Edu, a German company. We really love their product, and we teach kids how to create 3D worlds, how to code with them using sort of Scratch-like coding blocks, and how they can use it in VR. And we also teach them about virtual reality and where it's used for, and how the buttons, how stuff works, how you can learn with VR in different ways. And yeah, we also try to, so we don't have too much, we have a lot of autonomy, which I really like, I guess. So we try to collaborate a bit with the teachers from the schools to, for example, they make a virtual museum about a school, about a team that the school is currently involved in. So there we collaborate with the teachers, with their normal teachers. Yeah.
Are the kids creating the virtual museums, or are the
Yeah.
So how do they do this? On what platform do they do this, and how's the actual activity?
Yeah, so again, CoSpaces Edu, we're using them most of the times. Yeah, it's perfectly doable for them to create a museum where they also make it interactive. So when you click on so perhaps they're doing, I don't know, about the First World War or something, and they hang out paintings and sources, and they find a custom 3D model they upload, and then you can make it interactive, that you click on something, or perhaps you have a guide who shows you around in the museum, and that maybe takes 1 or 2 days to create something like that. It also, of course, depends on the age and skill level of the students. But
what are the longest programs that you run in schools?
So I think the maximum is usually sort of the equivalent of a 5-point course in university terms. So perhaps I don't know, 300 study hours or something like that. 400.
Okay. And how about teachers in school? How do they react to the courses you run in the schools? Should I call them more like courses or seminars? Is it more like a continuous class, or is it more like a one-off kind of class?
No, it often starts off as one-off, because again, we're sort of replacing teachers in this model. So it's really when a teacher is sick or in quarantine or whatever, then we get asked to fill in. But you often come back again, so you have to sort of be prepared for, okay, we've already been to this class and we're coming there next time. So it's usually, it starts off as a one-off workshops. They're all the workshops have to be finished at the end of the day. But then we build on we continue in the next sessions, we continue on the skills that they're working with.
Interesting. Okay. And how do teachers usually relate to this once teachers are back, but you're still running projects inside the classroom? Are you able to engage them in easily engage them in, make them participate in running the seminar with kids?
Yeah. So we sort of, I visit a lot of schools, and usually there's a bit of a divide between the schools where we go and we teach the trainers, and we train the teachers. So those teachers they're really working on innovating themselves, and they're improving themselves. They're innovating their education. And they're usually in a different mindset than the schools where we come and actually we do the entire program. You have schools who really want to innovate themselves, and you have schools who say, okay, we'll fly in a company and let them do it. It's a bit of a different relationship you have then.
So something I discussed with Anurupa Ganguly, CEO of Prisms of Reality, was whether headsets, the hardware part of VR, makes implementing education in VR in schools harder, because schools don't have headsets necessarily and might not be able to spend the money to acquire them. Do you think that there is a hardware problem, or do you agree with Anurupa that there is not a hardware problem and it is a lower level problem that can easily be solved as long as teachers and schools have a good reason to use VR in education?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. So yes, hardware isn't perfect yet, but there are definitely other larger bottlenecks in this situation, and they're not always that easily to solve. So one thing perhaps I want to address is that there's something in general about the adaptation to virtual reality, is that it doesn't you really have to try it to really experience what it's like. And that's already different. Augmented reality experiences tend to oversell when you see a video, and VR experiences undersell by a mile. It's really, I've given VR demos to, I don't know, perhaps thousands of people, and they're also, it's way more intense than I imagined it to be. So that, yeah, it's sort of, the idea spreads one headset at a time. So that's one fundamental thing in why VR adoption perhaps hasn't been as fast as people expected a few years ago. And then so that's one thing. So you have to try it yourself, and then you have to teachers have to think, this is interesting. This is something you can learn through VR as well. And I could use this for my students to do this and this. Yeah, that whole process takes time. Because then the next step is, okay, how do I fit that then? What kind of application would I choose? How do I fit this didactically in my lesson plan? That's all. That takes a lot of time for teachers to go through that process. And so that's the largest, to bring that whole didactical the didactical approach of teachers and technology, and bring that together. That just takes the time investment. Yeah,
I suppose that speaks to the difference between developing a couple of VR applications that are edutainment, educational entertainment. So one particular experience that is mostly a game that has some educational aspect, and that's one thing. But it's very different to develop a whole instructional design, a whole educational path that is also in bits and pieces taught through VR or XR, or perhaps the whole educational path, but with greater educational aims than just creating a game in VR that has some educational aspects to it. The latter is much more complicated to do. How have you
The
seen?
latter is more complicated to really create a complete
educational path, as opposed to one VR game that has some education aspect to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, and that's also, you see most of the innovation, at least over the past 5 years or something, you've seen a lot of innovation coming actually from the gaming industry, from the creators who show, okay, we can edutainment, we can create valuable edutainment applications, but to really make it fit into a lesson plan, that's a way larger challenge with a much smaller audience. And
yes.
does the business case still hold? Then is it worth to invest all the time?
Yes, and especially for teachers, they don't have that much time to put into. They're already quite overworked as they are, right? So
and teachers shouldn't. So what's the scale? At what scale does the business model work? That's often the question. So is it you see a lot of innovation happening at school, on the school level, or perhaps a community of 10 schools, and they're trying to they've received some sort of grant, some sort of subsidy to innovate, and they're trying to build something. Okay, that's interesting, an interesting way of learning. But I think the most successful VR training applications operate at a global scale and require millions of investment. And you can only really make that work if you work on a global scale at this moment. So the Netherlands is too small to make your fully operational VR simulator be able to make a profit. Yeah. Organizations like Simics, and so these medical simulators, which is becoming really a mature field. They have working simulations, and you can add your own scenarios, and they operate at a global scale, and you really need it because it's such an and it requires so much investing to create realistic scenarios which are fully interactive. I was thinking, I'm really impressed about those medical simulator companies.
So what have you found that is then the breakthrough with teachers to both convince them, I guess, but also allow them to realize that it is feasible to include VR as a tool for teaching in schools? What do you think is the breakthrough moment and the breakthrough way?
Yeah, so a few things. So you can, I'm talking about now about global scale simulators, but there are also really smaller things. You can use things that are not made for education, but you can still use them in your lessons. There are plenty of 360 videos on YouTube. You have the entirety of Google Maps, Google Street View to your position. You have all, or Google, or you could use Google Earth during geography lessons. Is Google Earth made for education? No. Is it interesting? You can bring students to any possible place in the world. Yeah, that's pretty interesting to give your lessons context, I guess. So if you choose material well and not expect that the VR application sort of covers your entire curriculum, but only a small part of it, you have only one goal: showing students something, immersing them in a certain situation to give them context to the learning material. That's not hard. That's not hard. That's not expensive. You don't need a whole lot for that. You can use cardboard headsets for it even. So that's one thing that makes things a lot easier, I think. And the other thing is, it's often very interesting to challenge students to create something themselves, and that's easier. And you can already check all the learning goals. Okay, they learn digital skills, then they learn how to deal with a new technology, and they need to analyze the technology to really see, okay, what sets this apart from other media. So you can cover a lot of learning goals in that process. And that, for as a teacher, you have teachers all have the challenge. Okay, I have to discover how everything works. Yeah, you can also let your students do the legwork there, I guess. Yeah.
I was listening to a part of the WISE conference a couple of months ago, and someone was mentioning, one of the hosts was mentioning how digital experiences can allow us to bring kids back to the Renaissance for a history class and make them relive what it was actually like, having such great immersive experiences. Now, from the games I've played on my headset, I feel like the technology is already completely there. It's totally possible. So what do you think is hindering this kind of experience from being adopted in learning curricula and being deployed at scale in schools throughout the Netherlands and abroad?
Yeah, does the business case work? That's the main thing, I guess. So over the past years, there was still this vicious circle. Okay, so a lot of schools didn't really want to buy headsets because there was not a lot of content they could directly use yet, and developers were lagging behind because there's not really a market we can sell to. So that's with any technology, with any new platform, that's the sort of hurdle it has to take. And really creating an educational game with the standards we have of games, that it's a multi-million-dollar project. And so you see it work in some circles. So again, medical simulation, that's a high budget application where also with teachers, with students and professionals around the world, everybody needs to learn anatomy. So you have these anatomy applications. Those are business cases that work. In history, it's harder. Yeah, it's hard to create a game like that, and it's a hard sell. We'll see those popping up.
Yeah. I think the business case for sure is
that's the challenge, making the business case work. And it's also so one thing I'm often frustrated by is, at least in the Netherlands, I see, okay, how much money is being spent on learning material. Yeah, that's usually 3% or something. And a large part goes to, a very large part goes to teachers, rightfully so. But yeah, the 3% was for was when you only had books as study material. Now you have digital apps and you have all these adaptive software, and the budget for learning material hasn't really increased. And now we're creating complete 3D worlds you can immerse yourself in. And yeah, we have to find a new balance between how much do we spend on learning material and how much do we spend on teachers. But that's a sensitive topic.
Yeah. And speaking of which, it makes me think about, how do you get in touch with schools? How do you get in touch with teachers? Who calls you up? Or do you reach out to them in order to run the training and seminar programs that you run in schools? With how many teachers do you have, by the way?
18 or something.
Yeah. And how many schools do you work with?
So these schools where we do our teachers go to, that's about 200 or 300 or something. And yeah, teachers we've had at so we've done tons of training at hundreds of schools, and we've had people from the Netherlands, but also internationally, people from the University of Rio de Janeiro, for all sorts of I love my job because of that. Just immersing yourself briefly into the professional life of somebody else and seeing how you can help them.
So I'll go back to my question. How do you get in touch with all of these?
Yeah, we've spent all sorts of ways. How can we spend a lot of time on how can we reach people? So I think the basis of that is content marketing, just writing stuff we find interesting, sharing it through social media, through newsletters, and gaining traction by that. But we also do, yeah.
Do they usually reach out to you, or are you trying to reach out to teachers directly, or school directors? I don't know.
We've almost never done any cold calling or something, but we do, just the usual social media ads, Google ads, sometimes a printed magazine. But yeah, so because I've given so many workshops and so many online events, and then you build up an audience. So now we have to spend a bit less time on building the audience. I like that.
So I've asked you a lot about the programs you run in schools, but that's definitely not the only thing that you do at the VR Learning Lab. Would you like to tell us a bit more about the other projects you have undertaken throughout time?
Yeah, so one project I could perhaps share a bit about, and shall I share my screen a bit?
Definitely, please do.
Now it's only talking heads. That's not. Let's practice what we preach a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a workshop we've been offering for the past few years. We weren't developing for this. This was made by Studio Upvis, and together with Karin Anema. She's a writer and had a friend who who was having psychotic episodes, and she wrote a book about it, quite intense book, and then they collaborated to create a VR experience about this about the episodes about experiences he had. And he was the client, the person was a very talented painter as well, so they had a lot of inspiration they could use for that. And yeah, what I often, this was sort of application, a VR experience that was part of a festival. But I often think that's a shame that you have all these beautiful, really rich VR experiences that visit 4 festivals, and then the subsidy is gone, and you never hear from it again. So here we tried, okay, can we form this into a workshop and sell this to psychiatric institutions, to hospitals, to social work studies, over the years we have had dozens of organizations where this really made an impact with people. People who actually work with psychiatric patients said, okay, I'm going to do my work really differently from now on, because they could empathize with what their clients might be going through. Yeah. So this was
Can you tell us the details about the experience? What happens inside the experience?
Yeah, so the experience is about you follow the psychotic episode, a psychotic episode of Tom, the main character. He's also the voiceover, and it's about him losing control, and the visuals become. You start out in his room, and it starts distorting, and it's quite a visual trip. But the whole experience is like 12 minutes or something. But the workshop is 2.5 hours. So it's not only about the experience; it's also about, okay, so what did people experience? How did it make them feel? Can you? It's a way you start a conversation. How will this affect the work that you do? Will you approach clients differently? And here, you really have people who say, this changes my outlook to certain clients completely. And that's
this is very, very interesting, actually. The application on the workplace of VR learning. Do you have other projects that you would like to tell us about, or other of your services that you've run throughout time?
Yeah. One thing that we're becoming more and more focused on is, so virtual reality, it has a place in society, and it will grow, but it's not something that I don't think I will be wearing. I don't even wear VR headsets every day, and sometimes a week goes by and I haven't done anything in VR. So I don't think that's something that will become really mainstream. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is something that really has the potential to be something that we wear on a daily basis, and that's pretty intense. That changes. It's really new to that you collaborate with that you augment your own senses, your own experience of the world. There are so many ethical questions or design questions in there. Will notifications be set to on standard? Is that the standard setting? Or so those are questions I often talk about with my students from university. But the past half year, we had two interns, Dan and Sanna, who created a game. Are you ready? Sorry for the title there. It's about the future with augmented reality. It's still in Dutch, but I'll show a few.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So it's about a day in the life with wearing AR headsets. So you wake up. And you have this AR assistant, which you completely, so it first helps you to do certain tasks before you can leave the door, before you can leave the school. But here it already becomes a bit more controversial, so here it gives you information about what kind of breakfast. It helps you making choice how much sugar is in the hummus or in the chocolate sprinkles. So it helps you making the right decisions. And we asked students then what do they, so we gave them these dilemmas, and what would they say if an AR headset would help them make the healthy decision. So this was played by 17,000 students in the end, I think.
Wow.
And they all, so it was a sort of, there was a research link to it. Or here, this scenario is about, okay, first it starts up with snap filters in real life. So now we have a dog face on everybody has a dog face on their face. And here then you play, somebody sends you a Minecraft challenge, and you get chased by creepers, and this scene ends in you walking on the street while the traffic light is red. And the suggestion is that you get hit by a car. And then the question is, should we allow should AR headsets be allowed during in traffic, or should they be should we have the same similar rules as we have with smartphones? So we try to ask students these kind of ethical dilemmas. Let me show one more example. So here, this is an example I really like. It's about it's not about really how we should learn, how AR headsets change how we learn, but it could also change what we should learn. So here you're on the playground and you're speaking to this Japanese girl, starts speaking to you. What is there? So you can't hear what she's actually saying, talking about. And the AR assistant detects that she's speaking Japanese, and she gets instant subtitles. Well, this is not a very exotic example. This is something that will become, when we have working AR headsets. Yeah, the technology for this is already here for a large part. Yeah, but we asked the students and the question, should we still spend as much time as we do now learning foreign languages, or should we just trust the technology to do that? And I think that's a really intriguing question. Students were still, the largest part of the students still said, of 10-year-old, 11-year-old students said, no, you still need to learn languages because you don't want to be dependent on the AR headset. And some of them said, okay, no, this is, it's perhaps not as necessary anymore, but it's still fun and interesting to learn a new language. And only 20% or so, or 15% said, no, let's stop learning. Let's stop learning French and German as we do in the Netherlands.
Were these students from Leiden University?
So the interns who made this were from Breda and Tilburg. And
these were interns at the VR Learning Lab.
Yeah, the interns made the game together with Nadine and me, and we showed the game was part of the Dutch Week for Digital Literacy and was played 17,000 times or something. That was an interesting project
sure
to work on.
What do you think the major applications of VR in education are going to be throughout time?
I see VR as one of the tools in your tool set for a blended learning approach. And I don't really, but perhaps I laugh at myself in a few years, but I don't really see education happening entirely through VR headsets. That doesn't. Perhaps if we have another version of the of COVID, and we have an even harder lockdown, perhaps. But
please.
Let's not hope so. Let's not hope.
Please. Okay. Thanks a lot for all of this. Let me wrap up asking you, what's coming up at the Virtual Reality Learning Lab? Are there any things that you would like to mention that our listeners should be looking out for?
Yeah, so I've showed a bit about this Are You Ready game, a sort of speculative design game about the future with AR headsets. And we're making a new version of that, and it's going to be international, and it's going to be focused on a bit more grown-up audience, not only for 11-year-olds. And yeah, we're looking for organizations to collaborate with this, perhaps teachers who want to show this to their students, or media companies who have a larger reach. This is something we do largely voluntarily, and we need help to reach more people and give more input to the scenarios. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing all of your experience with us today, Robin. I really appreciate the amount of direct experience that you have on field on utilizing and spreading VR and AR for education purposes with schools and organizations. So thank you for sharing all your knowledge and experience with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and great that you could keep up with the diversity of services we've done. And thank you.